December 28th at like 1:50 p.m. We just made the decision to pull his breathing tube, which just as a parent, there's just certain things that you never want to or would ever wish on any person. I think it's important for people to hear that the joy that they see in me, that the joy they could experience in me is really because of the depth of sorrow that I've actually experienced. And I actually feel like I actually became a more joyful, happy person post Benny than I was like previous to Benny. Love is real. It is measurable, and it is an underrated skill that most people do not take advantage of. There's a lot of people who are on cruise control who are alive. Alive and living has nothing to do with productivity. Yeah. Has nothing to do with your net worth statements. It doesn't have anything with your possession. Because I think so many people have this idea of like they're really living, but if they really were telling the truth, they're just alive. The perfect version of every person that you come across already exists. It's just waiting to be excavated.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited about today, and I think you're going to be enlightened and informed, but more importantly, you're going to feel heard and feel understood after you meet my good dear friend, Ben Laws. He's the co-founder of Avexia Wealth, Avexia Accounting, MaxLife Coaching, SOM Stays, and is also a coach at Strategic Coach, who many of you may have had the pleasure of being in a room with Ben. You'll find that he brings more energy than a Super Bowl party. He's the host of the MaxLife Podcast. You want to check that out. I've been on the show. He's had over 20 years of experience as a financial entrepreneur. He's an expert in helping individuals discover their true potential, unlock their inner strengths, and design a future full of joy, fulfillment, and meaning. His energetic and inspiring approach has made him a sought-after speaker, coach, and podcast guest, known for his ability to turn challenges into opportunities, which we're going to talk about those today, and ignite transformation. Personally and professionally, he's passionate to help others, which you'll see. He wants humans around him to live a life of purpose and abundance, and his coaching style is rooted in deep listening, curiosity, and a focus on growth. He resides in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, with his gorgeous family. Ben, here we are.
Hey, man. Dude, I feel like after that opening, I feel like in true political season, I need to say, my name is Ben Laws, and I approve this message. But no, hey, I'm so excited. When I saw this was on the calendar, Regan, anytime you and I get to be in the same room, it feels like we get to have an incredible conversation. And this one just happens to be recorded. So hopefully we won't get you canceled, banned, or whatever the other things are. But hey, thanks for having me on.
Man, it's so good to be here. So you built a life around enthusiasm and energy. Like if I had to just say the way that you make people feel, like, I mean, we go to Oprah Winfrey and she's like, you get a car and you get a car. You go to Ben Laws and he's like, and you get love and you get love and you get a bigger future for yourself. So how did you get to that place where you just like know how to pour out love and to everyone around you?
Well, that's a really good question. And it's, I remember going back to when I was a kid, like really early on. And, at the time you're thinking about like, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA. And again, all 5'10" and a half feet of me now just goes, well, that's ridiculous, right? Well, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And it's sort of like, I was the guy that cried when I shot a red squirrel inadvertently, even though I didn't know what leading a target was. Well, I figured that out pretty quickly. But what I realized early on, that I had a real passion for loving people, and I distinctly remember this. I think probably right around 7th grade, thinking that I just love to love people. And, it's maybe I'm also a product of like my household. My dad was a pastor. My mom was a ER nurse and then a hospice nurse, which requires a lot of love. And if you've ever been around me, I bring the Midwest goodbye to like a whole nother level. If one hug's good, like five is even better. And but the thing is that I was recently working with one of my program advisors at Strategic Coach, Allie. Shout out, Allie.
Yeah.
And we were talking about all the different emotions that you can have, like, so like anger, right? There's a certain point where too much anger is like, anger is like a natural human reaction. But like too much of it is just like destructive. And again, she has, I trust her. I mean, she graduated from Marquette like faster than anybody else. And, with a philosophy degree. And she said that love is actually the one thing that you can never have too much of. And that was so validating to me because it's the thing that I feel like that everyone is really at the end of the day looking for. They're looking to be seen, heard, understood. But why? Like when you feel these things, you feel like in your heart that you feel loved.
Yeah.
And I think that when you give love, it's you actually showing someone else, helping them be seen, heard, and understood. And so I think that's where a lot of it comes from. I get a lot of joy, Regan, as you've figured out. I love seeing people win. And I realized really early on that other people winning doesn't diminish my life. In fact, if I can actually be a tailwind, or I can actually be a sail changer, being like, hey, if you just change your sail just this 1 degree, you're going to pick up an additional 4 or 5 knots of happiness in your life. That it's just life's so much more abundant. I have an unlimited resource. I mean, so everything is happening in the world today. I look at that. I have a competition-free space because everyone comes in, they have a problem, and it's usually in an emotion, right? And it's usually based off of a fear of something, a concern about something, a worry about something. I mean, a lot of what you do, Regan, right? You give love in the form of making sure that people have like awareness of their body, awareness at a cellular level, and awareness of that they don't have to live maybe the roadmap of their ancestors, right? Or their genetic, right? The amount of times I've heard people say, it's genetic.
Right. Yeah.
And after working with you, it's like, well, no, that actually doesn't have to be the narrative. So that's how I view love. I think viewing love is a competition-free thing that AI will never be able to commoditize. I'll have zero compression of that, because at the end of the day, how you love is so distinctly your own. It's your own recipe. And I never worry about anyone stealing that.
Well, the irony of it is the more you give, the more you receive. I mean, it's just like
Shocking. It's amazing.
yeah, it's like, here, have some more. You got it. So the fascinating book I read early this year by Kamal Ravikant is How to Love Yourself. I don't know if we ever had a conversation around that.
Oh,
but
talk to me.
But the framework that it allowed me to make decisions in, because, just like you, we have so many opportunities now that we didn't have last year or 5 years ago. And then it's like, okay, which one of these opportunities are going to best serve me? Because at the end of the day, like we're the corporation, we're the organization, we're the energy that needs to fuel the future. And that book actually helped me frame it through that question. Well, Kamal discovered is that if he just would go into a negative tailspin, he would say, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself 10 times. And then it would kind of spin him out of it. And so I've been using that framework when it's like, hey, I think I'm not clear on this because I've got this emotional trigger, this trigger of overwhelm or stress around it. And then once I kind of put love on it, then I can just make a decision from the heart, and it has dissolved that emotional tension in so many circumstances.
That's so fascinating, Regan. Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach, one of his favorite and famous idioms is your eyes see and your ears hear what the brain is looking for. And it's so crazy that this author basically is saying You know, by the way, let's pull in Patrick Lencioni here a little bit.
Yeah.
And he says for teams, you have to say something 7 times for them to hear it once. Okay. If that's a team,
You're right. Oh, good. Yes.
right? Just think about yourself and the fact, and I find it interesting. He says 10 times. And by the way, if you've ever done it, I've done this a little bit, Regan. In part, what's it look like when being on the other side of your love? Right. I mean, that's an interesting question. And that when you actually look at yourself in the mirror, number one, it's sort of weird. Let's be honest. The first time you do it, you're kind of like, am I in punked, you know, or, you know, candid camera. But what's interesting is that I notice when I say it to myself is I go, you have a really nice smile. Like your eyes are really generous. And what ends up happening, I think, in that saying, I love you, like I love you, is that you actually are convincing the number one person, your number one fan, or at least the number one fan of you should be yourself, that you're worthy of love. I had interviewed Lior Weinstein, a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
And he was talking about one of his favorite books, which was like this, like Adam Smith. I think of this quote. But he said, the quote was that really stuck out to Lior was basically, in paraphrasing, to love and to be lovely. And what I loved about what he talked about, that lovely it means, is to be worthy of love. And I thought that was so interesting, is that we often think of love as just a one-way road, right? I give love. But we so often don't talk about how do we actually receive love, right? We're always talking about like, hey, giving love, be a go-giver. But so often the receiving, I think, is almost as important as the giving. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so true. I mean, I think from the background you and I come from, like receiving love is not talked about. It's like you sacrifice your life in pursuit of other people, in pursuit of God, or, you know, whatever.
Yep.
You know, Ben and I both grew up in religious households, and we both decided that we are the spiritual generators. So we created our own religion, and we're going to ask everyone to donate today. Ben's got a special link for you all.
And there's the cancel button. No.
Yeah, here's the catch. Okay, the love, but no, really, I think the thing about what you said that's so powerful is if you can be just as appreciative, like it feels really good when someone says you're welcome. Like when I say, oh, thank you, that was so kind. And it's like, oh, you're welcome. Like, because you know, it was like, there's intentionality there. And so I think that second piece of the thank you, you're welcome, is something I've tried to apply to my life, because, you know, my wife is very, she's very aware of that. And she says you're welcome all the time. And she teaches our kids that. So it's just these principles. And one of the reasons why I love hanging out with Ben, and one of the things you guys are probably learning right now, is the fact that you can go to these emotional places, but you also have a framework. I mean, you've built a life that allows you to just like continually receive and give love, because you're a loving person. Meaning like I always feel loved when I'm around you. I always feel better when we talk. And Ben and I, we could literally just spend all day, every day on the phone and just never like do anything but like make each other feel real good about life. But, but the interesting thing is you come around and you make an impact in the world, but you don't let the external circumstances pull you down. So how do you create an anchor for yourself every day? I know this morning you woke up with, or yesterday morning you woke up with inspiration, but what is it that keeps you on that trajectory towards love and towards a bigger future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you, by the way. And in the spirit of giving love, you're talking about your wife. Anyone who knows Regan and myself know that both he and I married up drastically in our life. But I want to give a shout out here to Jess. If those of you listening, she is a world class, like truly probably one of the most undiscovered talents in the Pilates world. So go check her out. Hive House Pilates. Changed my game, changed in terms of how I move my body. So anyways, I unasked for a plug, but I just,
Yeah, that's great.
it's worth saying. You know, I remember I had gotten asked back in 8th grade to go to this regional crisis intervention convention. And at first I was like, what are you trying to say here? Like, I need a intervention. But it was actually, they had identified me. I still don't know how I got identified, but to go to a 3.5-day training on how do you actually handle what maybe other people would articulate as a crisis. And one of the things that sticks out to me is this idea of attitude. And so often we think of attitude as, just like have a good attitude, right? We probably say it to our kids. We say it to, if you're an entrepreneur and listening to this, we say it to your team. If you're married, you say it to your partner. But I think oftentimes people don't really understand what is attitude, and how I've articulated it to Regan before is I think that attitude is agency over your emotions. And the framework that this regional crisis convention had taught me was that they said attitude is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react.
Mm.
And I think it's foolish for us to think that we're never going to have a day of having like sorrow, sadness, anger, frustration, jealousy, like envy, right? These are all the things that, a lot of the world's religions are built off of like, hey, how to handle them. But I think the thing that for me has always been true is that, that you have the capability and the agency of what filter you're going to put on, right? When you go to the optometrist, right? Everyone here has had at least one of those examples or experiences where they go, okay, 1 or 2, right? And they're flipping the lens, 1 or 2. And then they go, okay, now A or B. And then they come back and they go 1 or 2. And I think that we have that capability to do that emotionally for us to be able to go, instead of seeing a crisis, you have the opportunity to see it as just a problem to be solved. And so when I hear people say problems, man, all I just see, like, it screams out at me is just the word opportunity. It's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity. And I'm always reminded of Nelson Mandela's quote of, after he'd been in prison for 20 years, comes out, and he says, and then a reporter asks him, be like, hey, do you feel like you lost out, that you've lost? And I think this is so important. Like, that's actually real world problems, right? Having your freedom taken away for 20 years. And I loved his quote. He said, I never lose. He goes, I'm either winning or I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the opportunity of that we all have, is when something happens to us, is we have the opportunity in a split second to go 1 or 2, right? Frontal cortex or amygdala, like, right? And I think that the thing that is even more so in between those is your heart. It's actually probably the leading thought center that we never talk about.
Mm.
It's like either getting amygdala hijacked or like logic. Well, in between all of those is your heart. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
but
absolutely. Well, you experienced some heartache.
yeah,
So many challenges in life, and I think if people ever step into your coach room, they'd probably look at Ben Laws and they'd be like, this dude's never had a hardship, because you don't wear it on your shoulder. I mean, some people you can tell, like, oh, they've been through some shit, but with Ben, you just look and he's very refined, very polished, always loving. I'm not overstating it, by the way, very enthusiastic. But if you actually understood what you've been through, I think it will help people understand who you are as a human just a little deeper. But maybe if it's okay with you, we could chat a little bit about Benny and the experience you and Jenna went through, the whole family. I mean, that was...
yeah. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, the story I'm going to tell next, I think, is a representation that Newton's law is real, like equal and opposite reactions. And so the people who are, I think, when you look around and go, man, they're experiencing lots of joy, or they bring a level of like happiness. I just would remind you that there's probably more to that story behind the front cover, chapter 7, or chapter 50 of like 100-page book, or 100 chapter book. There's my life is broken down into a couple different segments. There's my life before Jenna, and then there's my life after Jenna. There's my life before strategic coach, and then there's my life after strategic coach. Like these are, and then there's, quite frankly, there's my life before Regan and my life after Regan. And I'm not just saying this because you're my friend, but there are inflection points in your life where you go, it will never be the same. It's not even subjective. It is absolute fact. And I think the biggest inflection point was in December of 2023. My son, Benjamin Kirolaz Jr., was born on December 12th, coincidentally enough, Frank Sinatra's birthday. And we knew going into this that we'd already had a little bit of like concern just around that, like some of his anatomy scans later in the pregnancy came back and they were like, hey, there's a large VSD, which again, Regan, like large ventricular septum disorder. So,
yep, that's it.
And which just means that there's a hole in your heart. In essence, like there's a space that the left ventricle and right ventricle. Am I right?
That's it. Yep.
Okay. And which again, it's so crazy when you think about your child isn't even technically born yet, but yet you feel the weight of that responsibility to protect and to keep safe your children. And so we knew that coming into Benny being born, that there was probably some road work ahead, some what others would consider obstacles, but I think there were some opportunities that Benny had to improve just his current standing, right? Quick surgery. I mean, talk about 20 years ago, Benny, just based off that, he's dead. But when he was born, what we ended up, what they wanted to do, and what we ended up doing was getting a genetic test. And so we'd already done a genetic test back like at week 12, a cell-free test. And of the cell-free test, we did the one that has basically, it's the holy grail. When you talk with the OB world, they're like, yeah, that's the test that, like, there's other tests that maybe have like different outcomes, but this is the test. Like if this one comes back positive or negative, we feel pretty good, high conviction. He'd come back negative with anything. And about 7 days after he was born, we found out that he had Edwards syndrome, or trisomy 18. Again, trisomy means 3, right? In terms of we're all born with, correct me if I'm wrong, 23 chromosomes, but are dual pairs. That just means that the 18th one had 3. And then there's like mosaic and non-mosaic. And he had the one that basically like 85% of his cells had like the bad form, like the really bad form of trisomy 18. And I just remember at like that moment, like a lot of crystallization happened. And there's a couple things that I remember, because at the same time they did the genetic test, they had a genetic test for Jen and I. We were like, do a swab and be like, okay, let's figure out where this came from. And I distinctly remember at that same time that I was like, wow. I was like, this is an opportunity here that could tear apart a family. Right. And, wow. And I remember as soon as that we had the swabs done, I had said, I was like, I think we just need to decide right now and come to an agreement that, like, I don't care about those results. I care about Benny's results, but I don't care about these results. And I said, I think it's really important. This seems like a really pivotal moment in our relationship for us to just be able to go, those results from our genetic tests don't matter so as far as it comes to like what do we need to do next with Benny and for Benny. And I remember, well, side note, everything came back great in terms of there was no genesis from either of us. But I remember that was one of these first crystallized moments of just being aware. But after we found out that Benny had trisomy 18, I remember the doctors, there's a change in mood. And it really centered around this question of, so Ben and Jenna, what do you want to do? They're like, what do you want to do? Like, we can keep him alive. And I found that is, if I'm talking slower, it's because it's a borderline. Like the sorrow still just like is simmers beneath the surface. But I remember thinking, while we're in the room with the NICU doctor and we have the palliative care, the pediatrician palliative care doc, and having grown up as a dad with a pastor, like you understand some of these conversations. My mom was in palliative care. Like you understand like where these conversations are going. But I remember thinking when he said that, and do you ever have those moments where you often see these in movies, right? Where everything just slows down and it's sort of like everything pauses. And then there's like this monologue that goes, right? You start talking to the camera, and that camera was myself. And I remember thinking, what an interesting word, alive. Like I was thinking, I was like, is alive the same as living? And it was this iconic moment that like, I'll never forget, because that is such a dichotomy. There's a lot of people who are on cruise control who are alive.
Yeah.
Right. And you see this in your practice and in your companies, right? And all of the patients that you transform, that so many of them were already coming in super productive, right? So just notice that alive and living has nothing to do with productivity.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with your net worth statement. It doesn't have anything your possession. Because I think so many people have this idea of like they're really living, but if they really were telling the truth, they're just alive. And it was at that moment like we had to make this decision, and of like, well, what was important to us? Like we keep Benny alive, but that would be a life of in terms of literally every day we could literally wake up and he could die. Like, I mean, not that we all have that, but like, I mean, really, I mean, the mortality amongst trisomy 18 babies and children. I mean, just put in context, most trisomy 18 babies don't even make it to birth.
Yeah.
I mean, what's crazy about Benny is that Benny went through a cell-free test. He's like 0.000000001 when they say effective at 99.999%. All of the doctors we talk to have never seen a false negative. Seen false positives.
Yeah.
But never a false negative. And then we go through the anatomy scan. Nothing pops up, really. They're like, oh, hey, this is like normal things. Like the baby just is continuing to, let's just see how this plays out. And then most trisomy 18 babies, because they have a lot of fluid in the womb, what do you call that, Regan?
The amniotic fluid, the amniotic sac.
Yeah, amniotic sac. Thank you. And is that oftentimes that the water will break, and then it's like an emergency C-section. And then most trisomy babies are born emergency C-section. Benny was a natural birth. After about 52 hours of after being induced, no, it's actually not true. In terms of really quickly, we got induced at like 2 a.m. And by that evening at like 11:37 p.m. on the 12th, He was born, but he was naturally born, and most trisomy 18 babies, they die within an hour after birth.
Mm.
And so when I look at all of these different things that happened, I mean, Benny, what really was like, he was my Powerball ticket. He really was my Powerball ticket. And after that day 7, it became even more and more clear. By the way, this Powerball awareness only happened like 2 months ago when Regan and I were actually in Arizona for an entrepreneurial event together. And I was explaining this Benny's story. But after day 7, we were like, okay, let's just see. And they're like, well, depending upon, like, it's like, if we're going to keep him alive, he's going to have to go at a certain point under surgery, because his VSD is keeping him, is really keeping him. And there's a high likelihood that he may not even make it through surgery. Like, he may not have even like the strength to make it through. And that wasn't something that Jen and I were necessarily on board for, is that we wanted him to only feel and experience love. And so we had set a date. We set a date of when we were going to remove his breathing tube. And, so that allowed us we moved into a different room, and we had family come in. And I have to tell you, it was some of the most beautiful moments from family, connecting, just things that I would never give back. There are stories that, like, I tell you in terms of my oldest daughter, in terms of not always like being on the same page. It just, boom, snapped us back in. And we had some incredible days. So many incredible moments. And one of the moments that I realized, going back to this earlier conversation about love, and oftentimes I think we think about love, it's like an ethereal idea. Well, what is love? We sort of feel it. But Benny actually showed me in spades that it's actually real. So anyone who's had a baby in the NICU, or just had anyone in the NICU, right? They hook you up to all of these monitors. It's monitors upon monitors upon monitors. And they had one NIRS, which measured, like, it was back on his lower back, measuring his vitals of his, like, kidneys and organs down there. And then he, obviously had oximeter, like, on his, like, foot to measure his own oxygen saturation, and then his own heart rate, right? Babies, it can either cry to let you know, or their numbers will let you know. And so whenever he'd get uncomfortable, or he'd be upset about something, whether he was hungry, a diaper change, his numbers would change. His heart rate would drop. His oxygen level would start to drop. And so there are these things, like, you could put your hands on these cares, that you could give to them, compression, and, like, usually one in the head, one on the butt, and it makes them feel like they're back in the womb. And, but the most effective thing, like, without a doubt, they would be like, hey, do you want us to give some morphine, some fentanyl, to, like, take off the edge? And we're like, no. Is that when we would do kangaroo holds, which is basically, shirt off, and, like, skin to skin. It was amazing within seconds of doing that. I remember one time, like, his oxygen level dropped down to like 31%. His heart rate dropped super low, and they were like, we want to give him, like, the fentanyl. We're like, hold on here. We haven't tried the kangaroo hold, and getting him on skin to skin. Within seconds of doing skin to skin, back up to 100% saturation.
Wow.
His heart rate just boom. And what it proved to me, that love is real. Love is 1000% real. And the thing that with being an entrepreneurial world is that this is an energy game. It's a 100% energy game. Like, time is a representation of how we allocate our energy. Like, the activities we do is basically the exchange rate of energy that we get back from, like, when we do those activities. And I think the most powerful of them is this idea of love. And that Benny showed me the fact is that love is real. It is measurable, and it is an underrated skill that most people do not take advantage of.
Yeah.
But as time came on, it it just became really clear, and I see it now. At the time, it was a little harder because I was so like in the business of being Benny's daddy and being a partner to Jenna as we were kind of navigating this. But in retrospect, when you look at photos, you can see his health just going down. You can see his photos just like he just looks sicker and sicker. And after all our family had left, I remember, and he was really struggling. And we were like, okay, tomorrow is going to be the day. And we woke up that next day, and he ended up having an incredible bounce back. It's like he knew that it was just Jenna and I, and we had this day. I mean, we held him all day, and we're like, wow. Like, did we, wow, maybe we're kind of rushing these things. And he was just incredible. I mean, we held him all day. And then about like 7 o'clock when the shift change happened with our NICU nurses, which by the way, if there's any NICU nurses out here and you know any NICU nurses, they are angels among us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know a NICU nurse, hug them, because I just don't think you fully understand what they do and provide. It is, you can't measure it on a balance sheet. But I remember at 7 p.m. that night, it was like he was just not even the holding skin to skin was keeping him comfort, and it was like we need to supplement that with like he didn't respond real well to morphine and to little some fentanyl, which is weird to say, right? Because you see the billboards and it's like, oh, this amount of fentanyl can kill you, and yet it's the thing that the medical world's been using forever.
Yeah.
And it was on the December 28th at like 1:50 p.m. We just made the decision to pull his breathing tube, which just as a parent, there's just certain things that you never want to or would ever wish on any person of what that experience is. And pivotal moment in my life. But and they had said, this could take 24 hours. And with Benny, it's like it was the craziest experience. He'd had all these things all over his face, these, like breathing tube and, feeding thing. I can't remember what it's called, going through his nose. And it was the first time we'd be able to see him without all that stuff on his face. And we had, we're holding him, and I'm taking video and taking photos, and, and I remember there's a point in a video where I was like, oh my God, Jenna, I think he just smiled. And it was the last thing he did before he took his last breath. So it was at this point I was expecting myself, and I think as most parents can probably reason with, and even if you don't have kids, you can probably be there. I thought that I was just gonna like fall apart. And the craziest thing happened, Regan. Absolutely the craziest thing happened is that the greatest sense of calm came over the room.
Mm.
It was like a peace that I've never felt before and have never felt since. And I mean, it was just such a beautiful moment. I know it sounds super weird, but it was such a beautiful moment. We got to sing to him and got to just be with him. We got to bathe him um, and really got that time frame to be able to really say goodbye. And what I remember was that over that time period, you felt this feeling like that Benny, that his soul, his spirit was not there anymore. And I think that was in a lot of ways comforting, but you could feel him. And yeah, I mean, it was 16 days, but you know, names are important, right? You know, when Reagan, you got kids and you name your kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being really reticent about naming Benny after me. In part, the fact that, you know, especially maybe it's different with dads and boys, right? In the fact of that you want them to be their own person, right? That's across all kids. But, you know, I think that there's a level of, you understand that, you know, boys look up to their male figures. And I never wanted Benny to ever feel like that he had to measure up to anything except for the vision he had for his life. And I'm cognizant that I can cast the big wake.
Yeah.
Jenna may say in terms of positively and negatively. And I remember after he was gone thinking, and actually it's actually fast forward, that next morning we flew down to where we baby mooned on Amelia Island for Benny. And I remember getting onto the plane and thinking, oh my goodness, he flipped the script. Like he flipped the script. Is I thought in terms of that by naming him after me, that he would be living potentially in my shadow. And I was like, he flipped the script and he cast something that in terms of that I'm going to spend the rest of my life living up to the life that he actually lived. Like he lived more, Reagan, in 16 days than I have in my almost 43 years of life. I mean, think about that. Like 16 days, more than 43 years of my life. And it was after that moment that Jenna and I really just started to make the commitment to really ask ourselves on a daily basis, ongoing basis, the things that we do and how we do them, with whom we do them. Is this adding to the equation? Are we keeping ourselves alive? Or are we living?
Mm.
And it's transformed. I mean, at the time, I was supposed to be launching a book. I had written a book. I mean, we're talking down final manuscript. And after 6 weeks of Jen and I spending intentional time, like we spent each one of the weeks that we had already allocated off for me to be off, spending each week on all of like these core things like time. What does that mean to us?
Wow.
Relationships. What does that mean to us? Wealth. What does that mean to us? Purpose. What does that mean to us? And really doing a deep dive, not just like an hour. We would spend the whole week because we didn't want Benny like memory to just stop. And And he's had ripples that you just can't, you cannot just discount. That book, Decided, I was like, I'm canning the book. I was like, if I do that book, I'm just being alive. I'm not really living. I'm not being
Mhm.
authentic. I'm not being genuine. My podcast results of that, that I wanted to have real conversations with real people about that intersection between success and life,
Wow.
right? And my role as a coach, as strategic coach, is I realized that I was like, you know what? Every time I get to talk about Benny, is that I'm living this love letter from me to him. And, we launched our 16 days charity because one of the things I think about, like, there's nothing as coincidences. I think Benny, a friend of mine, Blake Hansen, he had written me, he said that God must really respect you. At the time, I was like kind of tongue in cheek. I was like, well, it's got a funny way of showing that respect.
Right.
At this point, I'd take a gift card to Starbucks or something like that. But it didn't hit me that Benny was put on there to, I think, really bring to call to action that I was only alive before this. I'd had different levels of articulation of, like before Jenna, after Jenna, before strategic coach, after strategic coach. But I feel like Benny was put here as my Powerball ticket. I mean, he's given me, you could not pay me enough out of a Powerball than the gift that Benny's given me. And one of them was being in the NICU. There's a level 4 NICU, right? This is like the babies who are born at 21 weeks. Like, just can't fit in the side of just
Tiny.
your
Yeah.
hand. Babies who are born with their intestines and stomach outside their belly, right? And that they just need that time frame that the body will just absorb it. But 75% of the rooms did not have parents in them.
Mhm.
I mean, you listen to my story. I mean, just in terms of all intents and purposes, when I look at the things that were happening to other babies, trisomy 18, was pretty minimal compared to what other babies were dealing with. And this is where I go back to NICU nurses. You all are just amazing human beings, just absolutely amazing human beings. But when we started asking questions, we found out there's multitude of reasons why people couldn't be there, couldn't get transportation because they either had one car, they couldn't actually find childcare, or they didn't have enough time off from work. And so we created 16 Days Charity, and the goal of that was to give the gift of time to families and their babies in the NICU, to remove the barrier of what was causing them from being able to give a medicine that's more more powerful, that basically that to give them touch, which is a medicine that's more powerful than all the things that modern medicine can give, and that time spent. And in which, thankfully, Regan, you have agreed to be part of our board, and as we launched that, and we've already had it happen. I mean, this is breaking news for you, Regan. We had the opportunity, someone to reach out to us, and who had twins, I think at 25 or 26 weeks, something like that, and had reached out to us on a Friday and applied, and on Monday gave approval. And tells you in terms of why this is so important, is that on that Tuesday, after we we given the approval for the grant, which was going to allow her, by the way, 6 weeks of time with her babies, because her time was running out well, I don't want to get into the situation. Her time was running out in terms of at her employment. Her daughter died.
Oh,
Of the twins. So there's a boy and girl twins. And you just realize these impacts, these ripples.
yeah.
I mean, she and her partner are feeling that feeling that, like, I distinctly know. I mean, when I found out about, just my heart just broke, because I know what that feels like. But now she has the capability to be able to have the next 6 weeks worry free, and to be able to spend that time, that intentional time there, and these ripples. And so for me, what I realized post, I know this is a long story, but I think it's important for people to hear that the joy that they see in me, that the joy they could experience in me, is really because of the depth of sorrow that I've actually experienced. And I actually feel like I actually became a more joyful, happy person post Benny than I was like previous to Benny.
Agreed.
And I remember after Benny, I had this visual. I was imagining like this. If you can imagine this Colorado setting, right? Anyone who's been hiking in the mountains there, right? They're beautiful above the tree line, and our life is often this picture of going from peak to peak, right? From memory to memory, and we're walking this ridge line, and I remember distinctly being aware of that. On one side was a valley of just sorrow that you get so lost in. It just is abyss. And by the way, no one would blame me. No one would blame me. They'd be like, understandable. And then on the other side, the other valley on the other side of the ridgeline was of complete indifference, of just burying myself into like my work. And I remember distinctly just walking that ridgeline and realizing that both were these paradigms of like potentially unhealthy, but that I had the agency to reevaluate the 10% that happened and the 90% of how I was going to react to it.
Mm.
And that's what allowed me to be like, I was the guy that in Starbucks, I would hear a Frank Sinatra song. And this is actually what we played at his remembrance. My mind is blanking. What do you call
Celebration of life.
Thank you. Celebration of life. Is that being born on the 12th? Is that I remember after he passed, and Jen and I, when we're walking in Amelia Island on the beach, and just having those 3 days after he passed before we came back into the fold of our other children, we made the comment that Frank Sinatra has the song that My Way. That Benny like did it his way. And anyways, I'm in Starbucks, hear the song. And previous to this, I probably would have been a little bit like uncomfortable about crying. And I was like, you know what? No, like this is the part of this aspect of feeling the spectrum. If you feel deep and great sorrow, it means that because on the other side of that is you felt deep and great love. And or flying back from LA from coaching out there, and oftentimes when you fly from West Coast back, the East is that you usually have to either take a red eye or catch an early flight just to get back by mid-afternoon. And so often when I leave LA, I catch this 6 a.m. flight, and you break through the clouds, right? Because there's always a good marine layer there, and you see the sunrise coming up. And these are the things that like bring back that memory. And so I'd be the guy on the airplane just starting to cry. But it wasn't a cry of like deep longing, but it was of the fact of a combination at the same time of the story that wasn't to be and the gratitude that I got to be part of those 16 days, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that answers that question of, having walked in the lowest lows. I think that I look at that now as discomfort and problems and worry and fear are just these incredible opportunities, because it just means that if you flip the coin, what's the other side of fear? Right? Hope. Right? And I mean, you can keep going down these words. So thanks for letting me share.
That was powerful. And I doubt there's a dry eye out there. And so the great thing about you, Ben, is you bring the level of realness to the work that you do, every single aspect of it. Like you're in your financial world. I mean, your clients just love the work that you do, and you're coaching at Strategic Coach. I mean, they would have you coach all day, every day, right? I mean, it's amazing because that level of realness, your ability to be vulnerable, your ability to cry on a Starbucks. I mean,
or on a podcast.
We're on a podcast. I mean, it's a lost art. It's a lost part of humanity that you're bringing back. And I felt it too when you were experiencing what you're experiencing with Benny. It was transformational for me. I realized like, wow, I really need to do some healing in my own family with my own kids. It doesn't need to take a trauma in your own personal life to actually have a transformation. And you can take Ben's story right here and you can say, wow, what do I need to do to start living again? Benny had 16 days. And what he did is he completely, I mean, he transformed your life, but he transformed hundreds, if not thousands of others' lives in the process.
Well, I will tell you that if anyone who's listening to this, if this causes just even a 1% change in moving towards living and not just being alive, man, that would just be the greatest. That would just be the absolute greatest compliment and ripple from and because Benny's story is not just a love letter to me, it's a love letter, I think, to everyone. And I think that what I've taken from this is that the perfect version of every person that you come across already exists. It's just waiting to be excavated. And that's really, I think, the difference between alive and living is that are you doing the work that it takes to excavate? Because excavation is hard. You got to go back through your history and the past of the things that, and the stories that we've told ourselves versus the stories that actually are. Mm-hmm. Right? It's this. I interviewed Tim Dyer, who's one of the co-founders of David and Goliath story of ad agency, but called Manifesto. And he said there's the A plot line of what you think that actually is going to happen, whether it's the hero or the villain. And then there's the B plot line, which is actually what actually happens. And I think that that excavation, if done, it's not about doing more work. What I've actually found in the excavation, and Benny helped me excavate a lot really quickly. And to your point, my hope is that you take the choice voluntarily versus having something in your life that just forces you to excavate quickly. Is that there's simplicity, and that in that simplicity is that there's a lot of great joy, and I think that for me, the reason why I could do it every day, the reason why I could have a conversation like this with you every day, is that one of the things that, like for me, that would fascinate about me for the rest of my life is seeing the sunrise on people's truths rise again and again and again, and that I get to have a front row to witness it, and that's my hope by me sharing Benny's story, is that people feel compelled or inspired to go, what is my truth and how can I see that rise?
I love that. Well, this has been amazing and really insightful for me and hopefully for everyone else. People who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, it's I have a just an incredible team behind me, but I have Instagram. If you look up the Ben Laws, which is interesting, by the way. There's a lot of Ben Lawses, but I'm the Ben Laws on Instagram.
The one and only, by the way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. And then on LinkedIn, again, as Ben Laws. And then on YouTube, if you go to the MaxLife Podcast, and then also on MaxLife Podcast on Facebook, MaxLife with Ben Laws Facebook profile. The other thing that will be coming, hopefully launching here by the time this is aired, is that there will be the maxlifebenlaws.com you'll be able to go to, and all the episodes, some of the other things that we're going to be doing, which I'm excited that we're going to hopefully be launching here this year. And then also in the next probably coming 6 months, launching a entrepreneurial, growth-minded, inner outer focused coaching company.
And that would be Max Life Coaching.
Boom. Absolutely.
I love it. So excited. Ben, you are a true hero of mine, true friend. I really appreciate you and appreciate your ability to share today.
I appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate just you creating such a great space, which is what you do for all of your patients and anyone who gets to interact with you, creating a really great space to be able to share. So thank you. Thank you for your friendship.
You're welcome. My pleasure. All right. Well, love you guys out there. Ben and I share our love, and we hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy it, and I know you did, then make sure you share it with your friends, family, loved ones, and get on MaxLife Podcast. Ben's doing some phenomenal work there. You're going to hear there's a massive momentum that he's going to be generating. So get over there and leave him a review, 5 stars or nothing.
Yeah, or nothing. And just on that note, remember, if you love what Regan's doing here, it goes a long ways. Remember to like and subscribe as well.
Appreciate that, Ben. All right, we'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.